And a privileged minority is a minority of the public that has the privilege of paying the whole cost. And where that happens is if you've got a public, let us say, of 1,000 people, but it includes 10 people who get a much larger benefit per person than the rest of them. And therefore the total benefit to those 10 is enough to pay the cost of the whole program, and the 10 say, well, it would be nice if everybody else would chip in, but they're not going to, so we'll do it ourselves. So if I have my house painted, I'm a privileged minority. My neighbors are benefiting because the neighborhood's looking a little bit better, but I'm getting enough benefit, so I'm willing. Right. If I haven't had it painted recently, so obviously I don't think the private benefit is enough. But when I do get it painted, that'll mean that the private benefit is enough to cover the cost. Yes?
Two things. Your talk about rationality reminded me of Brian Kaplan's book, The Myth of the Rational Voter. I haven't read it.
Yes.
I've heard a lot of good things about it, and I heard that he deals with that. The second is that you're talking about interest groups. Just reminded me of the whole problem of the stated system, in that the wealth is so highly concentrated in certain groups who hold the power over society because they are privileged through through the state, through the government. And that's the main problem.
But I think that's the wrong way of thinking about it, because remember that the same person, groups don't really get income, people get income. And the same person who is getting a higher income because there's a steel tariff is also paying more for his food because there is a farm program. He is also paying more for some goods because there's a minimum wage law. He is also, so I think it's a mistake very common among libertarians. I mean a view I disagree with, to think of the state as sort of a successful device by which some people enrich themselves at the expense of others. And that I think it is more useful to think of it as a mistake, as what I like to refer to as a thieves market, in which there are many people who benefit in the particular transaction that they're getting, but then the same person who is a member of a concentrated interest with regard to steel tariffs is a member of a dispersed interest with regard to farm policy and many other things, and he's losing on that end. And since most of these transactions are ones where net costs are larger than net benefits, it could well be that on average very nearly everybody loses. And the gainers are not all bad guys, because after all, one of the people who gains by the present system is a really good tax lawyer who is contributing the useful service of helping people avoid paying taxes. But he wouldn't have that high income if we didn't have high taxes for people to avoid. So like any change in the world, the existence of the state will have some sort of more or less random beneficiaries. But I don't think it makes sense to imagine it as the standard phrase is the ruling class. I have a chapter in my first book which is called Thieves' Market, or the Non-Existence of the Ruling Class. And the reason I say thieves' market is if you work through the logic of theft, it's entirely possible to have a situation where if stealing became impossible, everybody, including the thieves, would be better off. Because the thieves themselves, in effect, are caught in a market failure problem. Yes, somebody back there, all the way back. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say basically the same thing. If you quiz the survivors of Rwanda, survivors of Pol Pot's, the beneficiaries of our U.S. foreign aid, which helped those genocides, they'd be more concerned with the public bads problem and how to prevent people from providing public bads.
Yeah, on the subject of that, if people want a really grim view of the last century, go up on the web and find Rummel's democide site, because Rummel has tried to estimate, and I haven't gone over it, I don't know how good his estimates are, the total number of people in the 20th century who were killed by their own governments. He's not counting war. That is, he's not counting people who were deliberately killed in the context of a war. He's counting people who were killed indirectly. And I think his current count is above 200 million.
That was death by mass unpleasantness, wasn't it?
What?
Death by mass unpleasantness?
I don't remember that title. Democide is the term he mostly uses. Yeah.
If I missed this, I'm sorry, but if you talk about market failure in the realm of an individual deciding to become a candidate for any particular office, because I think that we're generally...
Let me discuss what's, I think, a closely related issue, which is people deciding to come to a conference like this, or to put on a conference like this. Because one of the problems that any organization to sort of improve the world faces is this public good problem. That even if you believe that working for the Free State Project or for abolishing some law or whatever, produces very large net benefits, your effect as an individual is small, your share of those net benefits is small, and therefore it looks as though nobody would ever do anything. And a solution to that problem, as to some other such problems, is tie-ins of various sorts. To find ways in which at the same time that you're making the country a better place, or the world a better place, you are also producing benefits for people who do it. So that, for example, various political, ideological, religious movements are also a great place for guys to meet girls and girls to meet guys. And that works. If you observe such a movement with a very unbalanced gender ratio, that's some predictor of failure. And why does it work? It works because we all face on this, I should say the mating market is a very imperfect market for a variety. I mean, have a chapter on that in my price theory book. And on that market, one of the things you want to do is to sort. You want to find a population of people who have enough in common with you to be at least reasonable people to check out as potential mates. And if you have a movement of people who share ideas, getting them together provides some of that. But there are other things, and I presume that most people who came to this conference, 15% of the reason to come was the idea that they would contribute to making at least New Hampshire and maybe the world a better place, and 85% was meet friends, whether of the opposite gender or just people to have conversations with, have fun, enjoy yourself, hear some entertaining talks, and so forth. But it seems to me the candidate is facing the same kind of problem. That the candidate who is really self-sacrificial is probably not going to last very long, and so you want a candidate who gets some benefits. Those benefits might be that you like feeling like an important person. My guess is that a significant fraction of the real pay of school teachers is being high status from 9 to 3 every weekday. Human beings care about status. All right? There's an economist called Robert Frank, who is not an especially libertarian economist, but he's a good economist. And he tends to do sort of unconventional, original things. And one of his books said, look, economists normally assume that all you care about is your absolute income. But human beings actually also care about their relative income. Human beings care about status. What happens to ordinary economic theory if you incorporate that assumption into it? The book is called Choosing the Right Pond, because of course you would like to be a big fish in a small pond sometimes. So similarly, for some people the benefit will just be being the center of lights and attention and so forth. For other people, it will be that the publicity you get will help your career in some other activity as a lawyer or something. Used to be the case that a lot of representatives were lawyers. I'm not sure if it's still true or not. Could be other things. But
Too true still.
what?
Too true still. It's true.
Still, yeah. But that in general, if you're going to be a candidate, you want to think about reasons why you'll be happy, not sad, when you win the election. Right? Because if you're going to be sad when you win the election, you're probably not going to stay in very long. Yes?
You said secure property is essential for long-term investment.
Yes.
I was just wondering what your take is on intellectual property.
Hoo boy. Last night I was giving that as one of 2 examples of issues where libertarians split sharply. The other is abortion. Because in each case, you have some libertarians who would say, well, intellectual property is clearly a violation of rights because I got this book, I bought it, I can do what I like with it, including copying it. And other people say, no, intellectual property is the purest form of property. It was created entirely out of your mind, not out of any material that anybody else might have owned, and therefore it clearly is a right. So no, the real issue with intellectual property at the moment, I think, is that it is becoming more and more difficult to enforce laws protecting it.